tribal alliance made up of the individual bands of the 7 council fires is based on kinship location and dialects: Santee Dakota, Yankton Nakota, and Teton Lakota. We acknowledge the sovereignty of the 9 federal recognized Native nations in South Dakota: Cheyenne River, Crow Creek, Flandre Santee, Lower Brule, Ogallala, Rosebud, Sisseton Wahpeton, Standing Rock, and Yankton Sioux tribes. As a land-grant university, it is our mission to provide access to higher education to all. We are committed to building respect and positive relationships with Indigenous communities through academic pursuits, partnerships, historical recognitions, extension programs, and enrollment efforts.
Thank you so much, Dr. Moore, for agreeing to read our land acknowledgement this evening. So kind of just to get us started, I'm going to just take this opportunity to introduce Dr. Elizabeth Castle. One of the things that I kind of mentioned before our live audience joined us was that Dr. Castle was actually my professor back when I was beginning my undergraduate career at the University of South Dakota. And one of the things that we kind of got to do was actually go to the United Nations, which I know all of you got to see in the lovely film that we just watched. And I cannot express to you in words what that experience was like, because it truly was a one-of-a-kind of experience, and one that I never would have been able to have if not for Dr. Castle and for the lovely ladies sitting here with me this evening. So kind of how it ended up happening that I ended up in the United Nations was that they said that they needed somebody to go, and I had a passport. And
this is not how I recall this story. So,
well,
we're gonna set some truth straight here, people.
So I mean, I'd been very fortunate to have known all of you, I think, for quite a period of time by then. So I agreed, and I didn't really think in that moment I understood what I was agreeing to and exactly what I was going to be doing. And one of the things that was like, when I watched the film and I relive those moments, I was like, my first thought is, man, I was so tired. We went there, and from the moment we got off the plane, I went there as part of a delegation representing the North America. So I was the North American delegate, along with represented youth delegates from Africa, South America, Australia, the Arctic Circle, and all the geopolitical regions of the world. So that was absolutely the most amazing thing that I think I've ever experienced in my whole life to this point. Don't tell my husband that, 'cause I'm pretty sure I should be saying, "Oh yeah, the day I got married, it was great.
Remember,
The day I gave birth to my child."
Live
I know, yeah. So
we can't keep it secret now.
So that's kind of how that happened. And then we were filming. So we were, as part of that project, we were doing some filming pieces, and I got to interview Marcy at the UN as kind of her role as in part of the 1977 delegation. But just to be there in the place where history was being made was amazing. Like, this is like, I don't even have words to express this. It was just like the most amazing experience, and get to know all the people I got to know from all over the world. And I would never have gotten there if I hadn't taken Dr. Castle's Beth's class.
Never know where that intro class
never know where it's gonna go. And it truly was a one of a kind of experience, and I'm proud to have been a part of this. And I'm so honored to get to have known both Madonna and Marcy and Dr. Castle and her family, and get to be a part of this experience. And then get to be on the film, so everybody can see me and then be like, "Hey, Morgan, I saw you in this film." So yeah, yeah. I don't have any. Sorry.
That this is the smooth handover to me.
Yes.
So part of this, and so my name's Beth Castle, and what I wanted to start to show and express a little bit is just, I mean, I appreciate being sort of recognized in this way, but this is what we do when we build community and we actually collaborate, and we're always trying to lift up. So you're always turning around and figuring out who is next to you or who can be on the team and who can go with you and carry it on. And that's why we're so pleased. And I want to thank Dr. Erica Moore, Selena Olvera, and everyone here, American Indian Studies Center, and Morgan Catlett Osborne. No, I won't call you that on live stream. Of letting us come back after the pandemic. I mean, everybody, you all have countless experiences. For some of you, like for us, a lot of us, this is the first time out, right? And we're doing a little bit edgy here, which is why we tried to do something like this, but we wanted to come here to the homelands. We wanted to bring this back to where it came from, because Warrior Women is a film, but the film was put together in collaboration. I've known these women for 22 years now, and it started as a student project just as a student project and an idea. And over the years, and that's just why it's like, you cannot underestimate how important you are and how much power you have. But the idea of being able to bring this film back here and then start that conversation about just the way in which a global Indigenous movement is born here on these lands, in Standing Rock, in the Oceti Sakowin homelands, is where we start a struggle back in 1974. And of course, it always goes back further, but when we're looking at this already, the part about the Warrior Women Project and our goals and our commitments is, what is the history? What is the history that we don't know? How do we recover it? How do we put it out there? How do we learn it? Because it's critical. And a lot of what we're trying to do is work in collaboration with community to do that. And as students, combining that history, activism, media, and the matriarchy that's at the basis of communities, that puts it all together. And so, with Madonna Thunderhawk, you got a great sense of her life in the film. Marcella Gilbert received her master's here at South Dakota State, so it's important for her coming back here, and just in being able to introduce them in the way that they have done amazing things, out in the world, globally, but it's always about local to global and bringing it back home, and the work that they're doing now at home in Cheyenne River. Before we sort of open up for questions, and I know how you love the bio time. Is there anything you want to say about anything else you think anyone needs to know right now about you? Because you really love to talk about yourself. It's your favorite thing in the whole world. If you don't, you can give me the big, our first thumbs down of the night, people. I needed it to be me, so you wouldn't be afraid.
Well, I do want to add that, not last year, the year before, we went to Boston and she got a honorary doctorate. So Dr. Thunderhawk is sitting here with us today.
Yeah, it's a hard balance between the respect of the institution and the rejection of it at the same time, right? That is your life's work, right, folks? You're here to get what you need, and hopefully change it in the process and not let it change you. So let's open up and start a conversation. If you have some questions, ideally, at least in the room, this is like the part where I'm like, how do we take all the things that make people uncomfortable, and try to avoid them, but we have to go to the mic and share a question with us so that other people can hear it. Is there anybody who has anything that they want to start with, a comment, a feeling? It could be about like the film itself, or it can be about issues tied to the film. Anything that's relevant.
For tall people. So I wanted to ask about education and the school, the survival school and the school that you're wanting to start. First part is, what would your mission be? And what were the 3 things in the film, I didn't get them down, that the survival school focused on? And then as an educator, first I was a high school teacher, and now I'm a TA here. How could I better integrate sort of like an Indigenous approach to teaching all students that that would help to break down this compartmentalization of Native American studies and literature and intellectualism so that it becomes normalized, not in the sense that it disappears, but so that it's not compartmentalized.
Go for it. Oh, you want me to go?
Told you, she's
Okay.
passing the mic.
So I'll talk about survival school. One of the things that I really liked about it as a young person being involved in that was that we were given a lot of freedom to think. We weren't told what to think, and everything was made really clear. I mean, if we came to the AIM house and decided to stay there, then mom would be like, okay, this is how it happens here. You do dishes, you cook, you clean, you take care of yourself. We don't, she just laid out all the rules. And then she said, if you don't like it, you can leave. You don't have to be here. And so we knew, of course, I wanted to be there, but all the others that were there who came that weren't part of our family, they knew that they could, no one was forcing them to be there. They could leave anytime they wanted. And so that gave us a lot of freedom, but it also gave us responsibility. Because if we were choosing to stay, there was certain things that we had to do. And one of them was pay attention and listen and learn. Because someone, like in that film, might ask you, well, what's in the 1868 treaty? We have to know that. In fact, when I first went to survival school, that's what they handed me and said, you need to know this. And I knew then that I was going to be involved in something really special, different. Because where else in the world, of course, when you're young, you don't, at least for me, I wasn't, thinking about what's happening. I mean, it's like you're a young person, you just want to do what's fun and hang out with your peers and, like that. And so I thought all young people Indians were learning about the treaty. I thought we all knew that we had a special relationship with the government, that kind of thing. And then later, as we were, few years later, I realized, wait, no, those guys don't even know that. I mean, it's like, so it was really empowering to know that I was learning about my people as a Native person living in this country and our relationship with this government, that it was unique. I had responsibilities, the government has responsibilities, and my relationship is with the government. It's not with the local cops or the state or whatever. When it really came down to it, I'm not dealing with you. I want to speak to the government. And that really empowered us as young people. And then we were given the opportunity to think for ourselves. Like when the Run for Freedom started, when we started that, before it started, we were like, okay, what are we going to do? And, we were asking these guys and they're like, well, what do you want to do? And because we knew what was happening, that there was a lot of political prisoners during that time. A lot of Indian people were going to prison, not for what they go for now, but for political reasons. And so we knew that it was a situation that was just another way to keep our people down and to make us all criminals and like that. So when we asked these guys, they're like, well, what do you want to do? You guys figure it out. And so they gave us the opportunity to think for ourselves, to problem solve, use our critical thinking, and we were always responsible. I mean, that's the other thing, is we weren't allowed to make a mess, no matter what kind of mess it was. and walk away. We were all responsible for, if someone made a mess, that was all of our mess. And so I think the freedom that was given to us and the belief in our intelligence is what young people need. Not being told what to do and what to learn and how to learn it and from who and blah, 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 but more of like, what do you want to learn and how can I help you learn that? And also, telling us that we are responsible. If you can do that, then if you can play the game, then you can do this too. If if you're going to do that, these are the consequences. That's all yours, not just the good part, the bad part too. And so because we held each other accountable, and I didn't notice, and I really didn't recognize it until way later as an adult. And I heard my mom talk about how one of the schools in Porcupine on the Pine Ridge Reservation came to her and wanted her to come to the school and do an in-service training to the teachers to teach them about disciplining young people. And she was like, what are you talking about? Like, how are you doing it with those kids? Because we were all apparently very well behaved. But, as a young person, we were still doing, what young people do. We were teenagers, not all of us, but some of us. But, that made me realize that we were so in our element, but also because we had good adult leadership and guidance that, it came natural. And we kept each other in line. And so I think it was a time that will never be. I mean, I miss it, and I've never seen it again. And I feel bad that my kids have never experienced that, and thank God for Standing Rock, because that was something that came really close to what we grew up in. And I miss Standing Rock as well. Do you want to add what you guys had to do while we were having fun?
Well, first of all, I was an educator. I had no clue. But I did know I can't, probably my generation was the last of the hardcore boarding school. When I went to boarding school, we had first grade. You stayed in first grade until you had a working knowledge of English. So we were all a range of ages in there in first grade, no kindergarten. And that was, in during World War II. So yeah, I'm, old as dirt, I go clear back to the 40s, So yeah, when I went to school, it was 1946, first grade. So school was never a positive. School education was never a positive, ever. And I didn't know that I wasn't able to make the wording, use the words, for the difference between knowledge and education and schooling. So when it came, how I finished high school, dang, I think I just hustled my way through, I learned how to do that, pretty good. But also, it was also, if you, did certain things, you got to go places, I got to, in those days, got to leave the school. We were boarding school, got to leave the res, and go play basketball, and, things like that. So, I learned right away how to, work the system. But, so anyway, as years went by, and then I had my 10-year-old son with me in first grade. I mean, he was in Wounded Knee with me in 73. So, that was, and he was the one that said, I don't want to go to school, Mom. Because I was working as a liaison between the Indian community and the legal defense community, because we had 380 people indicted by the federal government on federal charges for Wounded Knee. So I was a defendant too. I was one of the first charged. So I had, that's where I was in Rapid City with working with the defense committee. So my son said he didn't want to go to school, and he said we should have our own school. So I think back to those days, good grief, that's how, I don't know, confident? I don't know. We just knew our world by then. And in the American Indian movement, and after being shot at for 73 days, I wasn't afraid of anything. Literally was not afraid. I mean, our own school, sure. Well, let's do that. You know, I had no clue. I didn't know how it was going to be, how it was going to, what, you know. But all I knew in my mind was a safe place for children. You know, besides that, at the legal committee house, the defense committee house, it was a big house that we rented, and then we had the legal office in there, and then people literally came to town for their, you know, for their preliminary hearing or whatever. You know, everybody camped in the yard. You know, it was that kind of a setup. You know, so we had young people, kids running around all over. You know, weren't in school either. So then, that's how we started. But as time went by, um, you know, what about curriculum? You know, and curriculum, what? You know, oh yeah, you know, spill and spell. Anybody ever hear that game, or is that are you all too young? Anyway, there was a game that they called Spill and Spell, and it
Like
was-
auto spell.
you throw things, you know, you throw these. What were they like?
Like little chips with letters on them.
Yeah, and then you could spell words, and then you get points and all that. So that's what he used for the younger ones, you know. And the older ones, most of them knew how to read and write, and but that's why they were doing things like, you know, treaty rights and water rights and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But also there was things like, what are you interested in, you know? And you know, one time they said to me, you know, well, gee, I wish we had this or we had that. A lot of times, you know, food was scarce. So then I remember one of them said, well, don't you get food stamps? And back in those days, it wasn't EBT, it was stamps, you know, they looked like paper dollars. Anyway, so then I thought, you know, so I said, no, because actually I didn't have one piece of paper that said I had any kind of authority to have 40 some kids in my house. Not one, in those years, not one person of authority from anywhere, because we started in Rapid City and then we moved to the res. Not once did any person of authority ever come to the house, knock on the door and say, okay, what are you doing with all these kids? Where's their permission from their parents for you to have them? Not once, ever. And the parents, most of these kids came from real dysfunctional homes, so the parents never came. They knew they were there, but that wasn't our focus. Our focus was the kids. So I didn't worry about any of that. So then I realized, hey, that's an issue. So I said, no, but so what do you think I ought to do? I don't know. So I said, okay, well, should we find out? So then we ended up doing a whole session on food stamps. What is that? Where does it come from? How does it work? Why is it you know about this, you know, at your age, you know? I mean, all of that what's in your life today that you need to know about? So when we did that, then it opened up other, you know, questions for them, because we went back all the way back to provisions of our treaty, which included food, healthcare, education. So we, you know, and it gave them a chance to think, well, how did that switch over to food stamps? You know, how is it, you know, what's the difference here? You know, that kind of thing. So yeah, those are the kinds of things we did, you know. And then we had a young person that was, before he came to stay with us, he was a huffer. And that was a definite no-no, you know. It was like, of course, nowadays it's, you know, something really scary going on nowadays. But back in our day, that was one of the worst, was huffing, especially for young people, because of the damage it did, you know. But when he came with us, then, like she said, the young people all sat him down and, you know, hey, you ain't doing that here, you know. That was their, you know, they took care of that end of it. But that was one thing so then I started asking questions. And I said, huffing, what the heck is that? You know? So then they were all explaining to me. So I said, all right, well, how about we do something on this? Let's do some kind of a campaign or something. I wonder how many kids in this Rapid City School District know anybody that huffs. Oh yeah, boy, they all started talking. So we did a whole poster campaign on it, and they did it, So it was just things like that, whatever it was in their interest. So it started out as a group home. And then they decided to call it, We Will Remember. We'll remember all this stuff we're learning. We're going to remember what happened in Wounded Knee in 1890. Things like that, they're the ones that decided to name it We Will Remember Survival School. Because we're surviving in a modern day. That was their decision. So, I don't know if that could ever be done again. Because two things. Of course, it's a different era now. Totally different what we're dealing with. But most of those children at that time, at the survival school, English was their second language. It's no longer that way. With our people now, English is the first language. So that's a big difference. So with Lakota being their first language, that their outlook on life was totally different. The concept of society was totally different. So they were able to just get in there. And it was easier, I think, for them coming from dysfunctional situations in homes or whatever. They were still able to deal with things, like she said, responsibility. So I don't know. I'm not an educator. I'm not in that field, but I'm into, humanity, being human, and that's the way we got to look at people regardless of age. Respect their intelligence, respect their abilities. And if you don't know, find out if you're interested.
One of the things,
Sorry.
I know, I was like,
Please. You're
One of the
flaking out
things
on
we
us
did-
here.
I remember is, Mom took us older ones who could, she said, okay, how many of you can read and write? So, we raised our hands and she said, okay, come on. And she took us upstairs and there was a big pile of mail.
Oh, yeah.
International mail supporting AIM. And she said, okay, you kids, you're going to be pen pals. So start answering these letters. But that's how we learned about people all over the world. And some of them came to visit us. In fact, one guy came every year. He was a little older than us, but he came every year for years. Probably about 5 or 6 years.
so if someone nicknamed Germany
Yeah.
is out there right now, please tell us who you are. We've been looking for you, but only everyone knows that your nickname was Germany because you were from Germany. It's a brilliant thought at the age, but what we wouldn't give to, because he took photos, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is part of how you like build the archive and build the story and figure out how to get those building blocks in there so that this is part of, mainstream education or people who care. But Germany, if you're out there, we're looking for you.
I think his name was Jorg, or that's how we pronounced it. Jorg.
Jorg, Germany.
Jorg, Germany. I don't know if that's how you say it, but that's what we called him.
Is your voice functional?
Jorg.
Yes. All right. So I know Madonna just got done telling us how she's not a teacher, but I feel like all you've ever done is teach people. So, and I hope that's how you guys feel. Like, I hope that you're learning something from this experience, because I love it when I go places, I can bring everybody with me. I can bring Mercy and Madonna and Beth, and everybody is always coming with me no matter where I go, because I love how they teach people. Like, I love how they teach the youth and the young people. And so what are you guys' questions? Because this is not something that happens every day, that we get people like Marcy and Madonna in a room and they can't leave, so you better ask questions. So, and I know you guys have them, like Sierra.
So my question is, you guys have been involved with Native activism for a long time. How do you see the movement changing with time, and how can we get involved in today?
You know, I don't, okay. The key thing about back in the day was the movement, and it speaks for itself. It was a movement. It was an organization. It was to extent that it was, organized, but it wasn't, an organization with, presidents and, that kind of setup, established meetings and all that kind of stuff. It was, no mission statement or stuff like that. Once in a while, there were some chapters that did that, people did. And of course, we had to, put stuff out there, but it was basically a movement. And the thing about activism is that it, at least with our people, is that the issues don't change. The issues are the same as they were when I was young. Why? Because we're indigenous to this land and we're land-based. We're the only ones. Keep that in mind. The rest all are property owners. They don't pay their taxes, they're done. Well, depending on how much white privilege is around, for them, but basically speaking, anybody that isn't indigenous. Because our ancestors took care of that. That's what those treaty rights are all about. Our ancestors who did not have a written language and all the corruption and fraud that went on for land, at least we have the remnants of that still left. And that's why we have our identity. So, yeah, go ahead.
So I think what I see that's really had an impact on I guess movements is social media. And it could be a positive thing, it could be a negative thing, but I find that it's distracting. I think there's a lot more dependence on the reflection back than it is, let's just do the work. And one of the things I notice now among, I don't like the word activism, but among people who are fighting for our people is, because of social media, you can be the only person on one issue. And now there's thousands of one issue people doing their own thing. Everybody's doing something, yeah, I'm fighting for my people, but they're doing it by themselves over here with their phone. And how is it providing unity? How is it building a movement? How is it, I think the other difference I see is there's a lot of events. Like people determine their activism by showing up at a protest and going like this. And then they go home. And they don't do anything at home. But they're at that every single every single event, they're there, so somehow that's important. We got to be visible, that I'm not saying that it's not important. I'm just saying that it's different because I don't see the unity. I don't I don't know what's going on unless I'm on Facebook, and I'm not a Facebooker. I get on there, but maybe every 2 weeks, if that.
And that's old
So,
news now.
yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, and so if there's something really important happening, but it's on Facebook and you're not on there, then how is that unity and building community and building movement? you know? So I think there's more of a individual separation. It's interesting to me. I don't know. It's interesting how it's changed. Because I remember back in the day, you knew who was in the movement, you knew who you could depend on, and everybody shared information and worked together. And that's how we figured out who the leaders were. Well, that person's good at that. Let them take, let's ask them to do it. These guys are good at this, And nowadays it's everybody's a leader. And when that happens, where's the movement?
Where's the people?
Where's the people? Where's your community? How is that impacting your community at home? That's the other thing I learned at survival school. Don't talk about anything you don't know anything about. And your work needs to affect your community. You're working for your community, not for yourself over here, So that's the difference I've seen. It's interesting to see that there's not a lot of work. There's a lot of action and events, but the actual work is difficult to see because our people are still suffering. We're still losing our language. Our children are still being trafficked in this state. We're still losing land. Our waters are still being stolen and polluted. And I mean, like she said, all the issues, uranium mining, they're back in the Black Hills, gold mining, all of that. And so when we're going like this, we don't want them here, and then we go home.
Mhm.
I mean, how does that change the course of the raping of our environment, or the raping of our people, or the trafficking of our children? So, I mean, everybody's aware now. And I think we have a responsibility as Indigenous people. Ever since Standing Rock, everybody and their dog knows who, they know how to say Mini Wichoni. They know how to say Ocheti Shakoi. So we have a responsibility because people know us now. And what are they going to see when they look at us? Just this? We have to be responsible now. Let's get our poop in a group here. Let's fight for our kids. Let's fight for our land. Let's get organized in a meaningful way so that we have a future. Because what we're doing now, we're going to save all this water and save all this land, but we're still losing our kids. We have, because of the effects of colonizations and the violence of genocide and the violence of assimilation and all of that, our people, where I live, we have young women who go to, we don't have our children on our reservation, which is a crime. I think that's something we should be fighting for, to have our kids on our homelands. That doesn't happen on our reservation. They go off to Rapid City or Bismarck or Pierre or Mobridge. They go to all these other places to have kids. Some of those, because of the violence of our history, some of those girls are leaving there without their babies. They just leave them there. And that's a result of the violence of what has happened to our people. So when we're out there going like this, how are we protecting our young people? We're running to everything and going like this and, putting our, going like this and whatever, wearing our ribbon dresses and putting on our feathers and all that. Meanwhile, we have struggling young people trying to figure out how to be Indian. What does it mean? It's not just running around going like this. It's not. That's useful. It's, it serves a purpose. Everybody in the world knows us now. So let's show them who we are. Really, how strong we can be, how powerful we can be, and how we take care of each other. I think that's where we need to be moving. And so the question about survival school, those three subjects were spirituality, land, and legal. our legal standing. But I tried to do a survival school a couple years ago. Took a week, and I took about 9 young people, and we wanted to teach them how to, in the model of survival school where you're learning, actively learning. We took them to the Black Hills because we wanted them to learn our creation history. All our sacred sites that are there, that's where our people believe we came from. So we took them there and we wanted them to see all that, but we also wanted them to, read, do some research. And as soon as we asked them to do that, we lost them. They range from 13 to 19, and I think only one of them knew how to read. So immediately they got anxiety. And then the other thing we learned is we had to be counselors because our young people are suffering still. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why this whole process of assimilation and colonization has, the film we talk about what boarding school has done. It's taken away our ability to parent, taken away our ability to even communicate. The schooling, the Catholic structure of schooling, where you take kids from this age, and only that age they learn this, and then this age, so then they're not learning how to get along with each other. And that's clear in schools. High schoolers are like this to the little ones, That's not our way. That's what I mean. Let's get back to who we are. How are we going to survive? Who are we going to be in 20 years?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things I learned about trying to do the survival school again. It only lasted 3 days because those children were so traumatized. First of all, like I said, they didn't know how to read. And so that created anxiety. And then that just kicked off one girl within, she started crying. So we're like, okay, let's, I put my arm around her and I said, do you want to go home? What's going on? And within her answer, she gave me 5 major things that she was facing. Obviously, one of them was suicide. She was afraid her grandma was going to die. Her mom was, she had 5 major things that this 13-year-old was trying to figure out. And then we asked her to read, and that just tipped it over for her. It was just another reason for her not to feel good about herself. And so we had to take a step back and say, okay, what are we going to do here? How are we going to help? What are we going to do? Because there's a lot of different things we could do. We could focus on young people that are ready to learn and already on this road to, learning who, being the activist or being, someone, a leader in our community, or are we going to look at these ones who need help? And what does that mean? How do we help them?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's, like she said, it's a different time. Our young people suffer greatly. And there's even less support now. So pick an issue and go with it. Because we need help on every single aspect of our culture, every single aspect of our future. We need some help. So I bet there's all kinds of questions now.
So-
Jeez, Marcy.
Hit
So-
the door.
See you, bye.
So does anybody else in the live audience have a question right now that you would like to ask before we kind of turn it over to our virtual audience?
Well, we'll just do a check-in to see.
Yeah.
There's some questions coming in, so is that you, Traylene? No, so it's not you, right? Because I just like, that looks like you. Would you like to have anything you'd like to say? Because you've been doing a lot of head nodding.
Like I'm just trying to soak it all in. So I guess like a lot of people ask me like what kind of changes I want to make, and it's always like the youth I'm always like thinking of. So I'm like, and I didn't grow up with the culture, so like I kind of want to like know like what are some ways that I can help heal those people, because I know our culture is like it heals me. So I just kind of want to know what I can do to help these people that are hurting, or these children, because that's where we need to start, because they're our future generations. Sorry, I get really emotional.
Yeah, I hear
Because
you.
it's like I'm really passionate about improving the lives of our young ones. So I'm just guess what can I do, and like how can I like get myself involved more, I guess.
So one of the things that we're doing, after Standing Rock, I quit. Well, before Standing Rock, when it was kicking off, I was working for Extension, and then I quit that to go to Standing Rock, and I spent about 4 months up there. And then when I came back home, I needed a job, and there was a nonprofit organization that did youth programming on our reservation for the last 10 years. And they needed a garden manager. And so I started working for them, and they're called simplysmiles.org. Go to their website and check it out. But anyway, through them, I introduced them to my mom, and my mom told the CEO all about the child trafficking that was happening in the state of South Dakota. And so, they're like, well, gee, we want to help, and Simply Smiles has a children's home in Oaxaca, Mexico, that's been there for 18 years now. And then so he, the CEO was thinking about it, and he was visiting with us. And so through our partnership and collaboration and thinking about it, we decided that it would be good to have a children's village on the reservation for the children who go through the foster care system, because that's where we're losing them. We don't have enough Native foster parents on our reservation. So, and the ones that we do have, I think there's only 5 left, maybe 3. They only want the little ones under 10. So 11 to 17 all leave the res. And when we were talking about this, we went to go visit our tribal judges, and it was approximated that maybe up to 16 young people per month were leaving our res into foster care. So Simply Smiles has with the collaboration and working together, we decided that we want to build a children's village on our reservation. So any of the kids that go through our court system on the Cheyenne River Reservation, if they need somewhere to go, they go to Simply Smiles. But because there's such a high number of kids that need places to go, we decided that we want the ones that are more long-term or permanent, because we want to take the time to focus on them. And so it's not a revolving door. And the grandmothers group that my mother and aunt started, Washagi and Naji, on the res, there's the older ones, and then there's the younger ones, the OGs and the YGs. And
Old grandma, young grandma.
we work closely with them in bringing, so say a kid comes for placement, we make sure that there's a meal prepared. We make sure that we smudge. We make sure that one of the grandmothers is there. I'm there. And if we have a grandpa, we ask him to be there, because we never know where these kids, who was the last person that showed them protection, love, and affection. It could have been a grandma or a grandpa or auntie, or, so we try to build that into this and into the, the children's village. So right now we're looking for foster parents, and we call them professional foster parents. On the ground, we call them kinship parents, but we're looking at professional foster parents because we provide them with all the training. And I have a master's in nutrition, so I use my expertise to teach them how to cook, using all kinds, the local foods, good foods, all that kind of stuff. And the reason why, the value of nutrition and all that. We have cultural, the elders who still have the language, the people who go to ceremony, all that. We include all that with the parents. They get all that training. So they move into a home where all you do is pay attention to these kids, and you get a stipend. Everything's paid for. Simply Smiles provides the food. Simply Smiles pays the bills. There's a vehicle on site if you need to go to class. I mean, and then you have all this support from all of us that are all on site. We're looking to hire 3 clinical psychologists, hopefully native, because we want to provide counselors to the kids, to their biological parents, and to the parents who are on site. So we're looking to hire 3. Right now we have 1. She's non-native, but she's part of the Simply Smiles organization. But she wants to pass that on to a native person. We want it to be, native people doing this. So that's one way. Help us find these foster parents who are willing to, and you don't have to give your whole life, because we know it's a big ask. We're asking you to move to the middle of our res, which, there's a store and a school. But we're asking you to move there and take care of kids that are traumatized. That's a big ask. That's why we took care of everything else. We're taking care of the bills. We're taking care of the food. You just focus on the kids. We'll give you training and support. So that's one of the projects that we collaborated with Simply Smiles on. And so the first house is finished. The second house will be done at the end of April, and the third house will come in August, and then there'll be 3 more houses. So we'll be able to house up to 36 young people, 6 in each home. We're also looking at bringing in, because there's such a high need, we want to also look at not only the permanent and long-term placements, but the sibling groups that may have been separated. So that's a project we're heavily involved in, that's happening right now on our res. And the other thing that we got going on is, we're trying to get access to buildings on our reservation that the tribe doesn't have use for anymore, and rebuild those buildings and make youth support centers. So like if young people need clothing or food, or even a place to stay for the night, or just want to hang out somewhere safe or whatever, we're trying to build that, because there's not enough of those kinds of places. There's not enough safety. There's not enough places for young people to feel safe and to think beyond their immediate need. So those are some of the things that that's just too.
We have just have a little bit of time left now. Can we check in, Kelsey, what do we have from our virtual space to add to this before we wrap up?
Yeah, thanks. So I have 2 that are, I think, really good questions, and you can answer however. But one is, what kind of role, if any, do you think tribal council should play in the movements you're pointing to? And 2, how can we as Indigenous peoples build community between people living on and off the reservation?
Your turn.
Hey. Well, right now, a lot of the different areas we're working in that Marcy mentioned, we have a working relationship with our tribal government. We've made that a priority because they are the governing body, and we keep them updated, You know, we let them know what we're doing, and it's just common courtesy above all else, you know. That's the main thing that we do, but also we know that our tribal councils are elected, at least on Cheyenne River, are elected from the communities, and there isn't any real requirements. So it isn't like politics outside of the reservation where anybody has to know anything or is expected. So from that, knowing that, that's why we make it a point to have a working relationship with our government. And we do that by just keep doing updates for them. With COVID, it's been tough, you know, because they have the council meetings on Zoom and everybody's just taking pot shots at them constantly because, you know, it's not in person, you know, and things like that. But they're going to start again, I think in April, didn't they say?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're going to start having the councils held in public again, council meetings. But anyway, so that's an ongoing thing that, you know, we should be doing anyway, regardless, you know. So that's one thing that, you know, that we do, and that is working. We, besides that, our grandmothers group, we've built, like I said, a working relationship, but we also we are issue oriented. We don't do gossip and rumor. So we have standing, you know, we have a positive, we have credibility with our tribal government, but that's taken quite a few years to build, you know, because it has to start with community first. You know, we have to be working with grandmothers that are, it started out, the reason why I'm saying grandmothers, it started out, those are the ones that are raising the grandchildren. Those are the ones raising children in the families. And so when we're working with the child trafficking, that's who we ended up working with, was the grandparents, basically the grandmothers. So it just kind of evolved from there. So yeah, that's what we do. You know, it's part of our work that we maintain.
I think also the other part of that question about, you know, what do we do? One of the things that I want to share, and like my mom had mentioned before, we're issue oriented. So, I mean, like I said, pick one, and whatever you're passionate about, go for it. But one of the things that was happening on our res before pandemic hit, and we were seeing some incidences of human trafficking on and off our res. And part of that is because the Keystone XL is coming like within miles of our southwestern border. So there's 2 man camps that are being constructed. Well, they're probably not right now, but they were all this time, being constructed within 60 miles of 2 of our borders. And so we were seeing human trafficking and a lot of missing and murdered. So one day, me and my friend were like, okay, let's have a meeting and see, just put it out there. Let's put some flyers out there, put it on Facebook and say, we're having a women's gathering. We're going to talk about human trafficking. And people showed up, mostly women and their kids. So as a result of that, we organized a group called Najo. And those of you who know Lakota language know that Najo means to whistle in alarm. And so we had witness training. You know, what do you do if you're witnessing a crime or violence? We had a self-defense class, and we had a gun safety class, and we were going to have a safe driving class. Because a lot of what was happening between Pier and Cheyenne River was women were being chased by other vehicles on that road. So we were like, okay, we need to know how to drive. I mean, you know, if someone's chasing you, what do you do? So anyway, so that group started. And so one of the fortunate things of COVID for our reservation is we had those border checks. And so that cut down on the trafficking a lot. I mean, the incidences that we were hearing about, it went down. But now they're gone. You know, they quit the checkpoints. So now we're like, uh-oh, we better start, start listening
Patrols.
and start, yeah. And so we do patrols also, but it isn't just, it started out with human trafficking, but it's also focused on violence in our communities. Because mainly it's the women and children and elderly that are suffering from the violence in our communities. So everybody got a whistle, and if you blow the whistle, that's just to let everybody else know that there's a Najo person here, there's a witness here that's gonna witness what's going on, and that's it. We're not gonna try to stop it, we're not gonna jump in there or anything like that. We just wanna witness it, and then we give our, report to the police so that they have it on record. So that's one of the things that we decided, because we saw a need. We were hearing about women being chased off the road and girls missing and, MMIW. So we just put a flyer up and that's what happened. So now we're gonna do a patrol actually tomorrow night in one of our communities. And we're also looking at doing a media, we want to interview our communities and really get an idea of who's being affected and how. Because one of the things we know for sure is MMIW, it's not our men that are killing us and taking us. It's men from outside our communities. And so we also got a resolution passed for the tribe to declare a state of emergency for women and children on our reservation. And right after we got that passed, COVID hit. So that's been sitting there because of the COVID, the tribe has had
Working with
to.
the tribal police.
Yeah, we're working with the tribal police. They know us. They're like, they have patrols as well, but not in every community. But they work with us too. If we're out patrolling, then they tell us who their patrols are so that we're working together that night. So that's another thing that we're doing on our, in our communities because
We're busy.
yeah, we're very busy.
There's no time to get old.
But pick an issue, put it out there. Put it out there and see who
Do
responds,
something. Yep.
and
Get on
then
it.
if there's just two of you, there's two heads thinking about this issue.
And that works with, so part of what the Warrior Women Project is trying to do is be a bridge space. And so one of the things, for example, like Traylene, it might be easier or more accessible while you're going to school here. You can work with us in doing some oral history projects or things that that you can do locally that also build your tools, because right, y'all are here largely in the room because you need that degree. But how do you do that and not lose, don't lose yourself to the system? And that's the thing we're focused on here, especially because also as students at institutions and universities, you have a tremendous amount of power, and I think you don't get to see it often. You engage in activism, you change a scene and you do something, and you don't actually get to benefit from it, but I guarantee it's changing things for students that are coming. And that's a hard thing to do, to bet on the future, but that's one of the ways that change is made. So, the Warrior Women Project, we're always looking to collaborate. And that's the other part, like we're trying to change the game and flip the script, because we all need to be these models of how words work. Like we need leaders who are doers. We need to change the idea of what a leader is. Social media is a great communication tool, but don't just leave it there, right? You think back in the day when nobody called each other, right? Like there was literally how they managed to get all these folks. I mean, that's the thing, it became a commitment, right? It became a commitment, you would show up. So there's just thinking that smart way, that with that critical thinking about, what does it mean to be part of change? And it's not this notion of I'm an activist or I'm in a movement. You need to lift as you climb and change as you go. And that's partly why, for example, nobody used the term matriarchy 10, 15 years ago. And it's coming out more and more, and there's a reason for it. We don't want it to get out there in the, politically correct climate where it gets pulled out of its meaning. But this is how, we support on the ground, doing the work, and we're doing community-based media, changing curricula, the whole deal. So we wanted to take, just see if there were any last questions or comments, and sort of close this part out and ask everybody, anyone here, if you want to join us on Sunday, we're doing our Meet the Matriarchs, where we talk about, here we're going to talk even more deeply about sort of matriarchy, the histories of Wounded Knee, beyond the sort of stump speeches that you get, that same old story. We're going to go deeper, and we're getting into the support systems and networks, because that's the thing. Change doesn't happen because one person gets a microphone, right? And it gets amplified. Change happens when, you commit and you share, and you're not asking folks to, pat you on the back. And we pat you on the back for all being here. So we really appreciate it, even though this is super awkward. Like this connection. I'm like, I feel bad, Traylene. I'm like, would you please get up and go over there and cry and behind your mask and ask a delicate thing? But you've already been so generous. And I think, it's hard to create this feeling, but we just want you to know that, we've been here, we care. It's all part of a network. I'm always going to bring Morgan with me, and vice versa, because that's what you do, and you need people to have your back. So, Morgan.
Yeah.
Now that you've coughed up a lung.
This is how this always happens.
Live. Just make sure and wait till everybody's watching.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Madonna's laughing because I will admit, I literally coughed up a lung on the stage at the British Museum. And I had people were panicking. And Madonna's just I'm like, Madonna, I'm like, and
We're doing this presentation at the British Museum.
like Beatrice Medicine was in the audience, and I think it was the fact that she's a Lakota anthropologist of great note, and I was about to say something slightly critical of her, and it was just like the spirits got me.
Spirits went.
They were rushing. They're like, have a Guinness. Here's a throat lozenge. What do we do? And Madonna, then you got up on stage.
Yeah.
And I was like, I really like that presentation that the woman just gave about the fancy shawl dance and the butterfly theory. And it was like, sort of me and my friend Verna. So it's what happens when you bring people together with the folks who are actually
I know.
the academics and the
Those
subjects, and
crazy.
you mess with it. That's what we're trying to do, is break the rules in all the good ways. So
Thank you. So
this was classier.
absolutely. Again, I just wanted to thank all of you for making time to be here this evening. I know it's a lot to ask you to take this much time out of your busy schedules to kind of come and sit and be part of things like this. But I mean, the reason I ask you to do it is because I know a lot of times when we talk a lot about experience, and we talk about your experience and what you want your experiences to look like here. Well, this was my experience. This was part of my experience, and it was amazing. And that's what happens when you say yes to opportunity, when you get involved, when you begin building those relationships and begin working collaboratively with others, is that you get those amazing experiences that will define you as a whole person moving forward. And that's what college is about, just so y'all know. But really, I can't thank you enough, Madonna, Marcy, and because I always ask them. I've taken them literally everywhere I've gone since I left USD. We were at Crazy Horse when I was there. You come here before since I started here. And I just I will always bring them back as long as they're willing to come, because you'll never get an experience like this with these ladies.
Well, they're very important.
Yeah.
So I want to emphasize, but and we are, we are.
Yes.
Yeah.
And and I always bring back and I'm so grateful that I literally met Beth the first day I was ever on USD campus, and she intimidated the hell out of me. But I'm really glad that I went on to take those classes, and because I feel like that was part of that journey too. Is if you don't take the time to be in those spaces, and you'll never meet the people who will change your life. And that was what it was for me. And now it's been like 12 years. So thank you again so
Yes.
much. And thank you to our live audience and
Thank you.
everybody for being here. And now,
Okay.